Hello and welcome to another From the Dog's Mouth. Today we are joined by former Mississippi State quarterback and Mississippi State media personality Matt Wyatt. And for anybody who doesn't already know who he is, go ahead and introduce yourself to the MSU family, Mr. Wyatt.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Good to be with you. Matt Wyatt, MSU grad, May of 2000. Yes, I was there 5 years. I was not a three and done. I didn't get it done in four. I got it done in five. I'm proud of that, though. And I've been a part of the radio crew in one shape, form, or fashion going back to 2009. So the good Lord has blessed me with the opportunity to still hang around and be a part of as they say, the Bulldog family. So good to be with y'all.
All right. And we're going to do what we always do, and I'm going to go around and get the temperature of all the guys before we hand this thing off to Mr. Ricardo Suggs. I'm going to start off with my close personal friend, Mr. Jeremiah Short. What's going on tonight?
Oh, man, just excited, man, we hadn't done an episode in about a week, man, so I'm excited to, interview Mr. Wyatt here and just talk about his time in Bulldog sports. It's an honor for him to be on the show, so I'm just excited for that.
All right, so I'm going to be honest. I'm curious about back when he was doing head-to-head radio, but we're going to get to that a little bit later. All right, so let's go ahead to a guy that I finally met for the first time in person, Mr. Derek Thomas. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wyatt. I'm also Hey Bub Sports Dad on Twitter. I'm always on your streams on Facebook and Twitter. So I feel honored to have you here so we can talk about your time at Mississippi State, man. It's just Matt Wyatt, man. I mean, you going to drop upon us, Matt?
Thank you. Y'all are too kind. You're making me blush. But yeah, no, I am not going to do any more pooch punting. I'm not even flexible enough to do that anymore. That's how old I am. No more pooch punting even.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine. You had several fine years of service at Mississippi State. You know what I'm saying? So we good. Ricardo Suggs, the person who will be conducting the interview tonight. What's happening?
Oh yeah, I'm pretty cool tonight. Just getting past this rain, this little bad weather that we've been having in Houston, down here in Texas lately. But this right here, this is probably not trying to outshine the other episodes we have because those are very, very much well reported. But this one right here, near and dear. This is very near and dear to me because when me growing up, we're going to get to this, during the interview process and during the podcast. Everybody out there on Facebook going to say it's probably, if not, I'd say one of my top two quarterbacks of all time at State that I grew up watching. It was him and Sleepy Robinson. So this is real, real important to me. To have the rest of you guys in here doing this with me and joining me on this. This is very much well to honor, man. I'm glad that you finally you hit me back. You know what I'm saying? You didn't have to do that. As busy as person that you are, you took time out of your schedule to respond to me and be like, hey, I'm cool with it. Just let me know when, when I can be of serving. I really, really appreciate it.
Man, again, I just appreciate the kind words. That's humbling. Happy to be with y'all. So thank you.
All right. So without any further ado, I will not be the one conducting this interview. Like I say, Ricardo was the one who reached out to Mr. Wyatt. So I'm going to give him the pleasure of conducting an interview today. So let's go ahead and give it up to, Black Dog's, member, former pickup quarterback.
Hey, man.
Former pickup football player.
Oh, never gonna let that go.
Former pickup basketball player, when he was on with Omar Connor, he actually talked about how he shared the football field with him, in garbage time as a member of the JV squad. So, and happy belated birthday also, Ricardo, all jokes aside. So, the man, the myth, the legend, Chief Blackfeet, go ahead and take it from here.
Whatever, man. But appreciate the late birthday wishes, man. I really appreciate that. And I really can't say what I want to say to him in response to that, but we will talk outside after this podcast. But first, man, we're gonna do that. But first off, I'd like to thank everybody for tuning into this episode of Black Dog's Matter from the Dog's Mouth on this beautiful Tuesday. We have, in my eyes, is Mississippi State football legend. I watched him from the first time, he played at State. I want to say back in '95 or '96. During that year, he shared time with Derek Tate up until his last year there in 2000. It was he may not get a lot of looks, a lot of praise, but to me, I seen a lot of legendary games he was in. Two specifically that we're going to get to tonight during this interview. But first off, Mr. Wyatt, how are you doing today, man? Matter of fact, how was your vacation here this last week?
Yeah, that was good. Get away for a week, and we go down the Alabama coast every year, pretty much. We go to a place called Dauphin Island. It sounds it sounds expensive. It's not. It's just that it's like away from all the tourists and away from all the traffic, and you're kind of out by yourself. So it's a getaway. And got a little sunburn, ate some good seafood, and a week of relaxing. And, man, came back this past week and really hit it hard because the day that I came back to work, so last Monday, a week ago, my radio show that I do every day, for 2 years, we've been on from 12 to 2 doing a 2-hour show. It went to 3 hours. So we picked up another hour that we, are filling that time, and that's another hour out of your day. And so that's been a little bit of adjustment. So I'm really glad I was able to kind of get away for a week, put your toes in the sand before all that started. Yeah.
Okay, that's great, man. I'm glad you were able to do that. That's a beautiful place down there in Dauphin Island. But first off, I would like to start off this interview before the Mississippi State legend, the myth, started. Your high school career. I believe that you're from Prattville, Alabama. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Went to high school at Prattville, Alabama. It's just outside of Montgomery.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I've been there a couple of times. It's from what I see, there's a beautiful place there, and I would like you to talk about your high school career there. How, where were you? What type of player you were in high school? When it comes to that, and then what led you up to Mississippi State in between that time?
Okay. What y'all might find interesting, leading up to that, the way I wound up at Prattville. I didn't grow up there like my whole life. We didn't live there my whole life. My dad was a pastor, so we moved around a little bit. And I spent most of my childhood up in North Alabama in a town called Russellville. Y'all may be familiar. Chucky Mullins, who played at Ole Miss, he was from Russellville. That's that town. And it was, growing up, it was a football place, man. It's a football town. It's one of those communities where everybody in the community went to every home football game. On Fridays, when you would you'd see all your friends at school, well, you'd see them all again Friday night at the game. Everybody's there, So growing up, it was just football. And I, as a kid, decided I wanted to be a football player. I idolized those guys who would run out of the locker room. They were the Russellville Golden Tigers. They had the best looking high school football uniforms I still have ever seen to this day. And I just knew I was going to be the quarterback someday for the Russellville Golden Tigers, right? Knew it. Well, in the middle of my 8th grade year there at Russellville, Dad says, "We're moving. We're leaving." And I'm like, "What, at the end of the year?" He's like, No, in the middle of the year. You're going to finish the 8th grade at a new school. So that was pretty tough, right? Like you say bye to every friend you ever had, everything you ever knew. You pack up, and here we go. We're going to a new place and finish your 8th grade year. And that's a time, and y'all know this, 8th grade, 9th grade, that's a time in your life. It's, it's awkward enough, and you to have to make all new friends in the middle of 8th grade year. And we go to Prattville. And at the time, I would ask my dad, "Hey, why are we doing this?" And his answer was always, "Well, I just believe it's what God wants me to do and what he wants for our family. We're going down here to start a new church. It's just what he wants us to do." And I never did understand that. But we go. And I spent some time being real mad. I was angry that we weren't in Russellville. We were in Prattville. I didn't want to be in Prattville. I didn't know anybody and all that kind of stuff. And like a lot of guys who play ball, sports was what built the bridge for me into that new place and new friends and new community. Immediately, like first day at this new school, we go to out to what is PE, physical education. And there's a big group of kids down on one end of the field all playing ball and having a pickup football game. I didn't know them. They didn't know me, but I thought, well, I might as well go. And so we go and immediately started to make friends through sports. Immediately, get on the basketball team, then I get on the football team and played in the ninth grade and had success. And so football and basketball is really what built the bridge into a new time in my life there as a ninth grader. And so that I tell you all that to kind of, give you the context of I really took sports and football seriously because in this new town, in this new place, I didn't have anybody else I knew. My only friends were my teammates. It was everything to me. And I think that led me to have some early success as a ball player. So I started, this is funny, but my ninth grade year at Prattville High School, it's a 6A school back then. I think there's 7A now. But my ninth grade year, I played on the JV, or junior varsity basketball team and on the varsity basketball team. So I played double games every week. And during football season, I played on the ninth grade team on Wednesday nights and then played with the Prattville High School Lions on Friday night. So I played 2 games a week my ninth grade year, played a lot of different positions. I had 4 head football coaches in 4 years of high school. I had a new one each year.
Wow.
And the reason I got recruited, became a quarterback was because my sophomore year, I'd been playing different positions. In my sophomore year, we had a coach who was there 1 year as an assistant offensive coach named Frank McIntosh. Frank was the backup quarterback at Auburn when Reggie Slack was the starting quarterback at Auburn back in the day. And we were at practice one day. He was just getting his coaching career started. I picked up a football and I threw it, just playing around. He said, do that again. So I picked it up and threw it again. He called one of the coaches over. He said, hey, watch this. Matt, throw the football like you just did. So I threw it. He looked at me and he said, you're a quarterback. I was like, okay, all right. You want to play quarterback? I'll do it. So that was early in my sophomore year. I became a quarterback. By the end of my sophomore year, I was starting and playing. My junior year in high school, we got a new coach who came in with the offensive system. This was 1993 of we're going to get in a shotgun and throw the football. Nobody was doing that in high school football.
In 93? Wow.
In 93. Look, I'm not kidding you, Jeremiah. Our film study, when he was showing us plays we were going to run, he was showing us plays of the Houston Oilers and Warren Moon throwing air raid stuff now. Yes. So we go out my junior year and we're throwing the ball all over the field. And that's when I began to really be recruited. And by the end of my junior year, really about midway through my junior season, about 5 games into the year, Mississippi State was the first school that actually just flat out offered me a scholarship.
Yeah. I don't mean to stop you there, but if I'm not mistaken, wasn't Bruce Arians the offense coordinator around that time? I think it was around that time.
That's it. Bruce was the OC. I'm trying to think the name of the receivers coach on that staff. Christophel. Remember Rick Christophel, assistant coach? Yeah. Well, he was the
only 8 then, so
yeah. But you got Bruce Arians. Yeah, Bruce was the OC at State back then. So I gave y'all a really long answer, and I'm bad. You can tell I talk for a living, but I'll wrap it up. Just
not to stretch it out.
Yeah, I know how to stretch it out. I'll wrap it up. Just that I had a lot of success throwing the ball that year, my junior year. It put me on the map. I started being recruited because of that. Once State offered me, I started getting other offers, and we took off from there. But we never had a state championship team or anything like that. We made the playoffs. We were about a round or 2 deep into the playoffs every year, and then got beat.
Okay, well, that's the thing. Like, well, Mr. Wyatt, that's the thing we were getting to. You were touching on it right then. Outside of Mississippi State, like, what other schools were after you? When it come to recruit?
Yeah, Auburn recruited me. I had the opportunity to go there. Same thing for Ole Miss. Same thing for Vanderbilt. And I had really, I had one. Well, I take it back. I had two places that I considered that weren't SEC schools that I considered just because I had the opportunity to play baseball there also. And actually, Southern Miss was one of those. But in terms of serious conversations with coaches about possibly accepting the offers, it was State, Auburn, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, and that was pretty much it.
What about Alabama?
Okay. Alabama did not offer me a scholarship. And, the fact is, like, Alabama then wasn't what Alabama is now. I mean, they won a national championship in 92, but they weren't as, far and away as better than everybody else. And I didn't go to many camps. A lot of people didn't do that back then, but I did go to one at Alabama 1 year. It was after my junior year. And I got a lot of attention at that camp from Homer Smith. He was the offensive coordinator there. And we talked a lot. And he told me that they were trying to figure out if they were going to offer me or not, but he wasn't sure. And they never did. They gave me the opportunity to come there and walk on and try to earn it. But I'm like, hey, our family didn't have money. My dad's a pastor. My mom's a teacher. I'm going to take the scholarship somewhere. And it really worked out because the truth about it is, in the years I was in school, we beat Alabama 3 out of the 4 years we played them.
Wow.
We beat Auburn. We beat Auburn 3 out of the 4 years we played them. We beat Ole Miss 3 out of the 4 years we played them in the years I was in school.
So I guess I had a question just with your recruitment. I had 2 parts. I won't say nerve. Were you nervous about going to Mississippi State? I won't say it that way, but the fact you threw the ball around. So going to Mississippi State, I know even we had a player on about 2 months ago, and he said he's still waiting. He's going to wait to see if Mississippi State's going to throw around the ball 40 times a game now. So were you nervous about that then? And then 2-part, kind of put us in the mind of how recruiting was back then. Obviously, you probably were close to a quarterback that was highly recruited. How is it different than it is now? Even though, of course, you don't do the recruiting stuff like Steve and all those guys. How was it different back then? Because, I mean, we were a little younger, so we probably don't understand how it really was.
Yeah, guys, I'm telling you, it's just totally night and day different now versus what it was then. Mm-hmm. Look, I'm serious. This is how old I am. They didn't have stars. Like, they didn't tell you were a 3-star or a 4-star back then. There was no such thing. There was no internet. Like, if I really want to illustrate to my 9-year-old daughter how old I am, I tell her there was no internet when I was coming out of high school. It didn't exist. And she laughs. She can't believe it. But that's the thing. And I didn't talk to anybody who was a media member during the entire time. Nobody we didn't have media members covering recruiting. It was just happening. You're getting phone calls from coaches and that kind of thing. So it was so much different then. I didn't feel any pressure. That's the thing about it too. Like, you think about a recruit now who has multiple SEC offers. Think about, there's all kinds of pressure that goes with it. Everybody on social media knows what his offers are. They're tweeting him. Fan bases are tweeting. Man, I had no pressure whatsoever. So it's night and day, a different scenario now versus what it was back then. And I enjoyed it back then just because, you got to go to ball games. One of my unofficial visits to Auburn, I was talking about this the other day. I remember my dad and we sat right behind Drew Brees and his dad at an unofficial visit at an Auburn game. You run into people that were great players. He was younger than me, a year or two. And my dad and I were at the concession stand during this unofficial visit. And he goes, "Hey, that kid sitting in front of us, some of the people we're talking about, he's like from Texas or something. He's supposed to be really good." I said, "Really?" I said, "He's not very big at all." He said, "I know he's not big, but he's supposed to be."
It's strange is you're saying he's a little younger. He's still actually playing in the NFL. That's the weird.
Oh, look, it's ridiculous. Look, Tom Brady and I are the same age. Okay, we're the same age, and there's, night and day difference. Yeah, but I promise you this: I'll beat him on the golf course. I saw his golf game, and he stinks. I'll beat him on the golf course.
You got to make that happen, man. You got to have Tom Brady invitational.
That's it.
Tom Brady, Drew Brees, y'all go play around the golf.
Yeah, maybe if I get on Twitter and just talk enough trash, they'll let me try it. I don't know. We might have to wait till they retire, though.
That'll be cool. But one question I have for you, like, what did the old ball coach Jackie Shearer, what did he say and what did he do to make you choose? What had you choose? You know what? Let me choose to go to Stark Bay.
The first thing is he totally and completely won my mom over from day one. Like, she was convinced that he was the greatest thing since sliced bread, that he would say things like, you know, we're going to win a national championship here. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Well, she just like, okay, he's going to do it. She was the biggest Jackie Sherrill fan, like pretty much from day one. He had the ability to really connect with them and with my parents. And I think it was because they knew right away, look, my mom and dad are from small town Alabama. They both went to a small school, Montevallo. My dad played baseball there. My mom's a school teacher. You know, you can't fool a school teacher. They see right through all the BS. And they knew right away that he was genuine. They could just tell, look, he's not trying to put on some show. He just is who he is. They liked him. And that made me comfortable, you know. So when they would say things like, look, we're going to sign 2 quarterbacks in this class, so there will be a competition. It's not going to be like you walk in and we just hand you a spot and you grow into it. You got to compete. It's going to be tough. You know, they would say things like, our off-season program physically is tougher than what a lot of other people go through at other schools, but it's going to pay off with winning. It's just, you got to make sure if you come here, you're not one of the guys who quit. Some guys are going to quit. You got to make sure you're not one of the quitters. You know, stuff like that during the recruiting process where it was just real. It wasn't filling your head, you know, as the saying, blowing smoke up your dress. They were just real about it. And that's the way Coach Sherrill was. And it made us comfortable because that was kind of our background. That's what we came from. And so it connected with us.
So did they really sign quarterbacks that year?
Yeah.
Who was the other quarterback?
The other quarterback, we were the same age, was Rob Morgan. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Warren Central, right?
That's right. Won a state championship at Warren Central. You know, Rob and them's junior year at Warren Central, he and Kevin Prentice on the same team at Warren Central, they played South Panola for the state championship, lost to Deshae Townsend, Dwayne Rudd, and those guys at South Panola, came back, had a rematch in the state championship game, 94, South Panola, Warren Central, and this time Rob and them won it. And, yeah, we were same age. And here's what's cool, guys. So they signed us, same age, quarterbacks. We got to compete against each other. It was heated. Then we became friends. And after college, now we are married to sisters. So we're brothers-in-law now.
How ain't that
wow. So it was the classic, you know, guys go out at night and you see a pretty girl and you're like, hey, she got a sister. And you actually did it. That's weird.
Look, it's not quite that simple, but so I met my wife and we got engaged to be married. And while we were engaged, one night, her younger sister's like 2 years younger, was single. We're like, look, just come to Starkville with us and hang out. And Rob's going to meet us. Yeah, Rob's going to meet us for dinner. We met for dinner. We saw them the first night they met. We saw them for like an hour while we ate. We didn't see them till the next day. And the rest is history.
Wow.
I don't know if Rob want that story.
Yeah, right. Well, hey, look, you know, the truth is the truth, huh? Why shy away from the truth?
Well, to touch more on that recruitment, when it came to your recruitment. Now, if everybody on here know, probably maybe including you, before you were recruited there, Mississippi State was terrible. They weren't the Mississippi State Bulldogs that were there when you were there. They had their little spotty moments here and there.
Right.
So with you coming from the house, when you say you had the career that you had, when you all was either round or 2 deep every year, you saying that with Jackie Sherrill, him, you know what I'm saying, him being him, in which, like, I've heard stories when it comes to him, that's the reason why he wasn't really, like, you know what I'm saying, accepting in a lot of college circles, because he is himself. He's going to tell you how he feels, because I remember as a kid being 6, 7, 8 years old, every year during the Egg Bowl, him and Billy Brewer going back and forth on TV. Like, I remember that.
That's
you know
right.
What them call him. I remember that one common statement and what he called Billy Brewer a habitual lie on TV,
on television, yeah,
on television. And my grandma was like, "What? Did he just really say that?" And like that was like for him to be he was like, I know a lot of people looked at Les Miles, but honestly, man, like a lot of people just don't know that Jackie Sherrill was the first villain in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was who he was. Like he wasn't gonna sugarcoat. He wasn't gonna be somebody he was. But for that question leading into that, like when you got there in that first year there, when you redshirted, like did that like deter you or kill your confidence? Like, okay, I'm coming in. I know that the person that here starting at quarterback, I had a better showing in camp. I'm better than. Did that make you feel any type of way when they first redshirted you or not?
No, I think honestly, no, I didn't. I didn't have something where like getting redshirted or not getting to play that first year was, it wasn't something where like, killed my hopes or made me think about transferring, and that was another thing back then, people just didn't transfer like they do now. People didn't think about it, didn't do it. So not really. I just, what I remember about that first year coming in is once practice started, I came out of Prattville and I really thought I was great. I mean, if you'd go back and ask 18-year-old Matt, it wasn't a matter of was I going to lead the SEC in passing. It was just, am I going to do it in year one or year two? I was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I had all the confidence in the world, right? And then we start practice, and here's Eric Moles, here's Derek Tate, Kiefer McGee, these guys I've seen on TV. And it took about 2 practices for me to realize I was way, way, way behind everybody else. They had us making these long throws, the opposite hash, deep comeback throw. It's a really long throw. And Derek is making it with ease, and I'm struggling to get the ball there. I'm getting tired, and I just realized, man, I've got so far to go. So when they redshirted me, honestly, after, the practices we had been through, I wasn't surprised that they redshirted me. I knew I wasn't ready to play that year. So I really went through a humbling process. And it was good for me. Had they put me on the field that first year, I would have been lost. I wouldn't have known really what I was doing. But having that experience of getting humbled, and they put me last on a depth chart, and I'm redshirting and all that, propelled me to really get my act together, stop partying, get sleep, eat right, get in shape, so that the next year, this redshirt freshman year, that I could make a run at this thing. And I got serious about it, started working hard, and it worked out. I started playing that next year. And a lot of that was because a lot of that hard work and motivation I had going into my second year was because of how humbling the stuff was and the practices were, and how far behind I was behind these guys that were playing. I'm looking at Eric Moles, watching him. And I'm watching, these offensive linemen like Robert Hicks, who Robert got himself drafted, played in the NFL, great player, Kiefer. And I'm going, man, I'm on the same team with these guys, and I am nowhere in their league. I've got to get going. So for me, before practice started, I thought I was going to play. About a week into it, I knew I wasn't going to play, and knew I shouldn't, and knew I had a lot of work to do.
Okay. Well, go ahead. Go.
A question. That's not like a question about, let's say, your career. You mentioned the name Kiefer McGee. Could you explain to people just how good he was? Now, Bulldog fans obviously dreamed about him and JJ or JJ Johnson getting a chance to play together. How good was Kiefer McGee for those who weren't really old enough to really truly remember the talent that he was?
Kiefer was an absolute no-doubter NFL high draft pick. He was a combination. You're going to think I'm nuts. He was a combination of Barry Sanders, Emmitt Smith. He was like a tweener between those two. He wasn't quite as shifty and quick as a Barry Sanders, but he was as physical as an Emmitt Smith. He had a top end that if he got loose and broke loose, he had the top end that nobody's catching him, period. Nobody, no defender anywhere is catching him top end. He had this extremely low center of gravity like Barry Sanders when he ran. Kiefer, you'd give Kiefer a handoff, and sometimes I still have these visions in my head of watching him run, and he's running full speed, going around the end, trying to get to the next level. And literally his rear end is like a foot and a half off the ground every step he takes. he was no doubt an NFL guy. And he was the type of personality that everybody on the team gravitated to. He was he was a leader who didn't have to say very much. We just all watched Kiefer. He was just that guy. And the idea of him and JJ possibly playing together, man, I'm serious. Had he been healthy and had that not happened, and he and JJ Johnson were on that same team with us in 97, we might never have thrown the ball. We might never have had to throw the ball.
Wow.
That really was tough on our team in 97. Obviously, losing him the way we did.
Well, dude, when it comes to Kiefer, because like for you all to touch on that, I remember that Peach Bowl game that he played, and he was that season going into that. After that, like he was like, hey, this dude is like, he was a surefire, pretty much first round pick if he just had the type of season, because he was pretty much an all purpose back. With that being said, I know that you said you touched on it that it affected the team. Do you feel like that's the reason you all had the season that you all had in 97?
Yeah, we underachieved in 97. And when you go back and look, the fact is, this is something I've lived with my whole life, is that I carry around a lot of guilt for that 97 season because I didn't play well. Different guys handled things differently. I sort of felt when Kiefer passed, and it was the night before we began practice, I sort of started feeling like there was more on me now because he wasn't there. And it shouldn't have been that way. I shouldn't have done that. But I started to let it affect me negatively. I started to really kind of go overboard, feeling the pressure and stressing out. And instead of playing loose and free and having fun, I started to really lock up. And I had a bad year. It was very, very topsy-turvy. I had about a 3-4 game stretch in the middle of the year where I played well, but in some key games and some key spots, I didn't play well. And it kept us out of a bowl game. In 97, back then you played an 11-game season. We won 7 games, but you only had 16 total bowl games back then. And so we're a 7-win team, but we don't go to a bowl. So we underachieved in 97. I have always felt that it was in large part because of me, because we had a really good defense. We had J.J. Johnson. We had a great offensive line. We just needed more consistent quarterback play. And I was a sophomore and supposed to give that to us, but I just had a bad year. And so for all those years, I always carried around and still do a lot of guilt for that year. Seniors who were on that team, I always felt like deserved better. And the truth is, I know you guys didn't have me on to go like, let's go psychologist with Matt and get inside his head.
No.
I mean,
Hey, no.
that's why we got it from the dog's mouth. We gotta want to hear what you have to say.
Exactly.
You gotta hear what you gotta say, man.
But after that, so like the next year, 98, is when Wayne Madkin was a freshman. I started the first 3 games, and then I got benched, and Wayne took over and led us to the SEC title game. And I've had people over the years that have asked me, hey, well, did you think about leaving? Once you lost a job and you're not going to be the starter, you think about leaving, going somewhere else? Especially, today's mindset, people think we would transfer. But I never considered it because I always felt like right up to the end of my career, even in that year where I got benched, even the next year when I was a senior, played some more, he and I kind of split some time in 99. I always felt like I owed Mississippi State a lot, and I owed my teammates a lot. I just felt like I owed them everything I could give them because I didn't get things done in 97. Now, in reality, it's a team game. You got 11 on one side, 11 on the other. You got 85 scholarship players. We're all in this together. I don't have a single teammate who ever said anything or would say anything to me about, only winning 7 games in 97 was my fault, because they understand that. But that's the way I looked at it. So I'm just saying to y'all, that was part of my motivation to whatever role they give me on this team in my junior and senior years, I'm going to be the best at it and help us win, because I owe that to my teammates. I owe that to Mississippi State. And now, as an old guy, I look back on that, and I'm really glad I took that approach as opposed to leaving or transferring or just quitting or something like that.
Whining.
Well,
go ahead, Ricardo.
Well, I want to, like, not right before Jeremiah asked this question. I want to go go back to 97 right quick to that last game. Something that still burns terribly deep in me to this day. That Egg Bowl, the fight that you all had, and then the highway robbery of that game. Because I feel like y'all still should have won that game. Yeah. But we're not going to get so get into that to the whole dramatics before, during, and after that game.
So yeah, the 97 Egg. We my vantage point on that fight was I was in the group of players that were on the visiting side. If you think about where the visitor sideline is now in Davis Wade, and we were on the far end of that sideline. We had a group of players were getting ready to do drills. And out in front of us, up the visitor sideline, is where everything kind of instigated. It's funny, whenever this comes up, Rob Morgan, my brother-in-law now, he remembers things much more vividly. He can remember which guy pushed who and who started it, all this stuff. I don't remember things very, very well or that well. I just remember seeing about 15 yards from us, some pushing and shoving began, and it was a group of people. And so about 4 of us made our way. We're going to go, kind of your first reaction. We're just going to get these guys apart. We're going to break them up. By the time we get there 10 yards away, there's fighting going on all over the field. I don't remember how or who started it or how it broke out. There's just fights going on everywhere. But I also then remember it was just over. Like I grabbed one teammate, pull him away from one. There's another guy grabs a teammate of theirs, pulls him away, and then it's over. It's like it's from my vantage point on the field, looking at it field level, it started and then it was over. And everybody made the biggest deal out of it because they all saw the television angle, right? Like, so when the TV broadcast started, they were like, hey, look at what happened here at the beginning of the game. We had a scuffle on the field. Well, they had the high cameras, and from up high, you had about 10 seconds of punches being thrown, and helmets being swung. And it looked a lot worse than it really was. And the only guy who got bloody in the whole thing was Wes Shivers, who was a recruit. And he caught a helmet accidentally. But other than that, I always felt like people made a big deal out of nothing on the fight.
Yeah. ESPN surely did.
And Shivers was being recruited by Ole Miss and Mississippi State.
That's right.
So I have a question. It kind of goes back to kind of your mindset as far as why you never left. Like as a redshirt freshman, you shared time with Derek Tate, and then you were the man, and then you split time with Wayne your final 2 years. Talk about, what type of patience you had to have to be able to deal with sharing a job, twice in your career. Because quarterbacks today, they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to fish me? I'm out of here.
Justin Fields.
That's right. They're going to leave. And, I'll be honest with you, I've sort of matured or if that's the right word, I've kind of, grown in the way I think about the modern transfer era. At first, when all this stuff started, I was kind of like, come on, man. You got to stick it out. You can't just leave at the first sign of adversity. I've started to look at it a little differently because as I get older, I understand a little more of how small a window of time that 4 years of eligibility really is.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's platooning quarterbacks. They're only going to play one if he's healthy.
Great.
The rest are going to – it's not like we're running backs where they give us reps during games.
That's Steve Spurrier.
Yeah, unless you're Spurrier, you got a chance.
How
right?
many of them actually excelled in the NFL?
But, so I start to understand why guys leave. You want to play, and the NCAA tells you got a 5-year window of your life that you're eligible, and that's it. And, man, again, the older I get, 5 years is a small, small window of time. And I understand they want to get on the field. But back then, one thing is it was just a different time. I make myself sound so old, like I was walking to school 2 miles in the snow every day, that stuff, But it was a different time back then. You didn't have hardly anybody that just went around thinking about transferring. It was a little more old school approach, old school thinking. And the other thing I think for me was partly what I told you, about 97, but also even earlier, splitting time. I've always been a very pragmatic person. I'm just going to look at things flatly like they are. I don't get my head in the clouds very often. Sometimes, the detriment is that leads you to sell yourself short sometimes, but I'm just going to be very practical about this stuff. And I did that even at a young age. And I looked at it, when I was a redshirt freshman, I'm watching Derek Tate at practice. I'd seen what he'd done the years before. I watched him on TV. The guy could play, and I felt like he was good. He was good in practice. And so I knew if for me to outright win this job and totally take it from him, I'd have to be really good. And I didn't do it. I didn't take it from him. And so then I get the job. Well, when I got the job, I didn't play very well, not as well as I needed to. And then in 98, when they benched me, it was right after the third game. I think it was what it was. We had played Oklahoma State on the road, and I'd had a pretty bad game. Well, maybe just a couple of bad plays, and then things kind of snowball on you, and you don't win the game. Well, my thought after the game was, hey, I hate it, but I understand why they're going to give Wayne a chance, because we have too good of a team to lose a ball game like this. We got to try something. So I was pragmatic about it, and I'd look at things in practice, and I always just felt like these guys I was recruited with, the ones I came in with, that I owed it to them to stick it out. I don't know where I got this early in life, but one of the things it's like a motto that I've always tried to live by. I think it probably came from my dad, and it's real simple. It's just 2 words. It's finish everything. And, even going back to a young person, I'd constantly hear this in my head: finish everything, finish everything, finish everything. And I never could quite let myself get in the mindset of, I started things here, but I'm just going to leave and not finish it. I just always felt like I had to finish it, whatever it was.
So a question I guess you kind of mentioned about your dad and being a pastor, and I don't know if he was a church planner or not. I guess when you mentioned, say, you going to start a new church, so I don't know if he was a church planner, but do you think, like, coming from a faith background like that kind of contributed to that as well? I mean, you kind of mentioned that you finished what you started, so do you think coming from that background kind of is what helped you kind of see yourself through all of that? Because most quarterbacks in your situation would leave.
Yes. There's no doubt. Yeah, that background, and for me personally, that if someone were trying to understand why I did what I did or didn't leave or whatever, you try to look through it through my eyes, and that was my belief was that I had prayed and relied on God, and He led me to Mississippi State. And so then I'm thinking, well, if I believe that's true, am I going to just now today, because things didn't go too well, am I now going to believe He didn't lead me to Mississippi State? Is that what I'm doing? Because if it is, that might be hypocritical. I either believe this or I don't. So the faith part of it was a big part of it, no doubt. And a belief that
Ricardo,
if I did what I was supposed to do, that it would work out.
Yes, sir. Okay, well, now with that being said, we talked about 97 and 8 more. Now we're about to get into the real meat of things, the year 98. I feel like that year was the beginning of the nuance of Mississippi State football, where Mississippi State football was actually making that ascending and went over the hump. With you speaking on, with Wayne coming in, you being there. Because I remember that first game against Vanderbilt where y'all spanked them in Starkville the first game. All right, from that point forward, like, can you speak on that? How that turned from you being the starting quarterback the first 3 games to the Tide turning over to the true freshman quarterback at Wayne Mackey?
Right. Yes. There were several factors in that. Like you said, we started the year against Vanderbilt, and then that game we played 4 different QBs in that game against Vandy, just because the game kind of got away from Vandy. We built a big lead. It was pretty obvious early on they had no chance to beat us, and so we started playing a lot of players. And at the end of that first game, Wayne got in there. He's a redshirt freshman, and they played him. And in his first game, you could see the light bulb, the lights just come on for him. It was the first indication that Wayne was one of those kind of players that he was going to be a little bit different in the game on Saturday than he was in practice. You know, there might be things that he might struggle with in practice, but once the lights came on, you could tell, okay, he's the real deal here. And I mean, you could see it in that first game. I could see it. We could all see it. And he had a really live arm, you know, in practice leading up to that 98 season. We'd see it at times. The ball just really jumped out of his hand. He'd make those opposite hash throws and the go throws with ease, and the rest of us are really grunting to get the ball out there. And so we knew the ability was there. He was good early. And so that was one factor. And the other factor was I played well against Vanderbilt in the start, but I remember there was a couple of throws I missed. And one was a touchdown throw to Dennis McKinley. We had him open in the end zone. I just missed him. And then I'm trying to think. We had a game at Memphis, I guess would have been game 2. And we played pretty well there. We went and won that game, ran the ball. We controlled it. But I had a couple of throws there I missed. Wide open guys, just missed them. And I started to lose my confidence. I had really, really, really worked hard to be ready for that 98 season. And after working so hard to go out there and miss a couple of throws, I started letting myself lose a little confidence. And I think as coaching staff, they started to sense that. And so when I played with a lack of confidence at Oklahoma State, about halfway through the game, they come in there and say, hey, listen, we're going to put Wayne in the ball game and let him go and see what he can do. And I understood it. I didn't like it. I wanted to play and try to win. You're a competitor. But I understood they're thinking, all right, this guy's been practicing well. We got to give him an opportunity. Maybe he can go pull this thing out. I understood it. And he went in and played well. We didn't pull it out against Oklahoma State, but he played well, and the team seemed to respond to him. And so after that, he took over and was kind of ready to go. He started making plays with his legs. He was tall, 6'4". He was a lot faster than people thought. He was 4'6" guy, but, you know, he played fast, started making some big-time throws. And, man, you know, you'd be hard-pressed to find a freshman in SEC history that made more clutch throws down the November stretch than Wayne Madkin did in 98 against Arkansas, against Ole Miss in some of those games. And our team was really confident around him. And it all pointed to early in the year, Coach Sherrill and his staff, they recognized we got one of the best defenses in the country. We've got some personnel on offense that are going to be first and second round, third round draft pick guys. We have a team that we can win this division. It's got to happen. And if the quarterback's holding us back, we got to make a change. And that's what coaches are paid to do. And they made that decision.
Well, with that being said, like I seen you spoke about the Arkansas game. I still remember that game to this day because Edward Smith had a man, like he was a mutant out there that day.
Edward Smith was an animal. And you talk about
go ahead.
I was just going to say he was built. Y'all ought to see Ed right now if y'all see him in a game.
We interviewed him a couple months ago.
He's been on the show.
Has he?
You know, he still looks like he can play.
Hey, he's a prime example that God just made some guys different. I mean, at our age, 40, Ed's probably 44 years old now, and you're exactly right. It looks like he could suit up and play. And if they put a uniform on him right now, he would fit in with those players right now. There's no doubt about it.
So was he the first one off the bus type guy whenever y'all went to those other stadiums?
Absolutely. And make sure you give him some clothes that are too tight. You want him to see the muscles.
Yeah, the mediums.
Oh, my gosh. He was just an animal. That defense was they were fun to stand over there and watch now. I promise you.
How was it practicing against a defense like that? Because obviously something we talked about with Ed when he was on is how unique that Dawg defense, because I don't think anybody even – I mean, we're about to run a 3-3-5 type of defense next year, but it's not Dawg defense at all. So
yeah,
how is it to play against a defense like that is so unique with man-to-man defense, safeties, blitzing, people coming from everywhere? How unique was it to practice against a defense like that?
We absolutely learned how to handle the blitz because, hey, every 11-on-11 scrimmage, we're seeing zero coverage and zero coverage and zero coverage and zero safeties. And as a quarterback, you're learning how to You pop up and fake that draw, knowing you're about to get hit, just go ahead and throw it. You're going to get hit. Here they come, but you've got zero cover, zero safety. So we're throwing a ball over the top a lot in practice. And, that's the thing. They worked with us some, but I do remember some heated arguments between offensive coaching staff, defensive coaching staff. They're like, we can't get anything done. You got to play us some coverage, because we're going to, we're going to play Alabama this week. We're going to see cover 2. We'd like to practice against some cover 2. You can't blitz on every play. You'd have some of that stuff at practice. But, the truth is, it really prepared us as an offense. We were more physical than everybody we played for 2 or 3 years. And the reason was we had to be in order to compete with our defense at practice every day.
So, I guess we're going to get into your analyst career and being an announcer and all that. But why do you think that, and I know we asked Ed the same question, why don't you see that Dawg defense like then? I mean, there's only a few teams I know that will go, as you say, zero coverage and just go man-to-man the whole game at the college level, because I guess most teams don't have the talent. But why don't we don't see that true 3-3-5 defense? Like Mississippi State has had variations the last couple of years with Manny Diaz. A lot of people call him Manny D. Dunn or whatever, even at that time. So why don't we see that style of defense anymore at the college level with that level of aggression?
I think it is because of everybody is spreading the field with their formations.
Mm-hmm.
I think that in the invent of the spread option offense, and now the hurry up no huddle and the way all that works, I think that's why you don't see it as much. Because back then, you think about the Dawg defense of Jolie Dunn, everybody we played had a quarterback under center,
mm-hmm.
right? You had 2 backs a lot. They had a tight end on the line, pro style offense a whole lot. So in order to line up formationally on defense and defend those guys, everybody was close to the quarterback already because of their own formations. Whereas now we're all running a spread or a variation of zone read offense. And we're all putting wide receivers outside the numbers. We're putting our slot guys on the hash or just outside. We're motioning all over the place. So just to line up in front of us and cover us, you got to spread everybody out. You're farther away from me. So get to me, you got farther to run, and because I'm spreading you out on offense, I'm spreading you out. Now, if you go zero coverage, it's a whole lot harder for you to disguise it now, right? See, again, think about it. Back then, if I'm quarterback and I'm under center, okay, and I got Dennis McKinley at fullback right behind me. I got J.J. Johnson at tailback right behind him. I got Reggie Kelly at tight end over here close to me. I can pat him on the butt. He's lined up at tight end. We're all bunched in here on our normal formation. So they can walk. If they wanted to disguise their coverage, the strong safety's covering Reggie. Well, he's all got to line up 5 yards from me. So I'm 5 yards from him pre-snap, and he may cover or he may blitz, and he's right there. Whereas now, if I'm in the shotgun and we're all spread out, if he walks down and he wants to blitz in time to get to me, he's got to go ahead and show it early. He's got to start tiptoeing, coming on down. It's a whole lot harder to disguise stuff because of all these spread out offensive formations.
Do you think that's kind of why because Jolie Dunn, it seems like, he was not on top, but in a sense, but the defense was dominant, and it seemed like he kind of, the last couple of years of his career, it seems like, I don't know, past his time almost a little bit.
Yeah, I do. I think that it was one factor is even back then, in order for that defense to work, you had to have 2 lockdown corners.
Chris Smoot and Robert Bean.
You had to have Smoot and Bean. And if you didn't have Smoot and Bean, just like he said, his old slogan, Joe Lee's, was every time you blitz, one of the bands is going to get to play the fight song. Right? If you have Smoot and Bean, we're going to blitz and play our fight song after the play. But if I don't have Smoot and Bean, you may be playing your fight song. And so when Kentucky came in there in 97 with Tim Couch and them, it took about 5 to 6 years for that air raid stuff that Leach and them were doing to start to filter onto other teams. And once it did, it became a lot harder for that Dawg defense to survive.
I have a question for you. I'm moderating the podcast, and one of the fans wants to know about your first Egg Bowl experience, because you did talk about your dominance over Ole Miss. They want to know about your first Egg Bowl experience. And one guy, Joshua Pankey, wants to know, how does it feel living in a house divided?
Huh?
Yeah, that's a great question. As a matter of fact, I'm so glad to be on this podcast with y'all tonight because it gets me out of painting. My wife's painting one of the rooms downstairs, and she's like,
"Red and blue, is it?"
No, it's like off-white eggshell, something like that. You know how it is. They've been watching HDTV, and now we just got to do something to our house. You know how that goes. But yeah, so the house divided thing, it's fun for two reasons. One, when I was in school, we beat them all the time. And two, here recently, we've been beating them all the time. So it's fun right now. It's not always fun, but it is now. And what was the first part of the question?
Want to know about your first Egg Bowl playing experience.
Okay, so I remember that one very fondly. My redshirt freshman year, we went to Oxford. We played a day game. It had rained all day. It rained that, leading up to it. The field turned to mud, basically. I'd have to look. I think the final score was something like 16-0 or 18-0. We beat them over there. I got to play in the game. That was the year, my redshirt freshman year. Derek Tate started the game. They put me in 2 or 3 different times in the game. We threw it some. I had a 2-point conversion run into the end zone in that game where we did a little quarterback draw thing, made them think we're going to throw it on 2 points, and then ran it in. There's a couple things that I do remember. One is it was a shock to me when we came out of the locker room. That was my first time to ever play over there, and it was a shock to me when we came out of the locker room way, way before kickoff, and we're just coming out to get loose and start warming up, and there were already opposing fans waiting up in the stands to yell and scream and call us all kinds of names. And I'm like, man, it's 2 hours to kickoff. Y'all need to save it or something. Yeah. So they were getting started early. And then I remember there was a play in the game too. The longest run of my career, we were backed up. It was like 3rd and 9. And the play comes in from the sideline. It's quarterback draw. And I was not fast at all. I'm like, give me, I do this, give me the play again. So I'm thinking, that can't be right. Y'all can't want a quarterback draw right here. But they called it. So I get the snap. I step back. It parts. I take off running. I tuck the ball. Here I go. I'm splashing in the mud. I stiff arm a guy. I did a DAC. I stiff armed a guy, and it propels me a little farther down the field. It turned into about a 40-yard run out to midfield. We get tackled. We splash in the mud. I get up. Lahita Grant, one of our receivers, is slapping me on the helmet, congrats. Yeah, and I look back where the play started, back down there around the 10, and there's a little yellow flag sitting in the mud for holding. Offense brought the whole thing back. I felt like that was pretty much apropos for my career. Longest run of my career called back for holding. But we did win the game, and that's what I remember the most.
Speaking of longest, do you realize you are on the top 10 list for longest pass in Mississippi State history?
Yeah, I do. An 80-plus yarder to Jeremy Jones against Auburn in 1996. That play, I started that game against Auburn at home. There was a couple of games there. The first game I started was against South Carolina. We won that one on the road, and then I think I started the next week against Auburn maybe. But anyway, I remember that 'cause they were beating us pretty good. It was late in the game. We call a go route. I just drop back, throw it as far as I can throw it. Jeremy Jones could absolutely fly. We used to call him Forrest Gump, He could absolutely fly, and he ran it down. And no joke, if you could find the highlight, I only threw the ball about 45 to 50 yards in the air, but it hits him in dead stride, and then he began to bobble it, and he batted it up in the air and bobbled it 4 or 5 times before he hauled it in past the 50-yard line and then took it on in for a touchdown. And it's one of those, if it, the game had been televised where everybody could see it, that highlight would still live because watching him bobble it for 20 yards up the sideline was a pretty funny sight.
Oh, well, okay. Well, speaking on that, like we're gonna go attend the 98, 99 season. Like one thing I've had debates with many people, man. I felt like that 98 team was better than the 99 team, and I felt like that 98 defense was better than the 99 defense.
Hmm.
So with you playing on both of those teams, like, what's some of your takeaways from it? What's some, like, if any of you have any regrets, what are they? And what do you think held that 99 team back? They really could have been like a national championship contender or a national championship winner.
Well, that's a great question. We won those 10 games, I guess 9 regular season games. The 10th was we beat Clemson in that bowl game in 99. And I never have really stopped to think about that, to look back and say, what held us back from being a national championship team that year? Well, that's a good question. I feel like the 99 offense was maybe a little better, a little more explosive, just because, we didn't have JJ in 99. We had JJ in 98, and he was tremendous. But Wayne was a year older in 99. I was a year older. We had the ability in 99 to get in the shotgun and throw it up and down the field some when we needed to. And you'll remember both Wayne and I did it some, right, at the end of games. And so I feel like the 99 offense, it might be one of those deals if you could have paired that 99 offense with that 98 defense, then maybe now we're talking. The 99 defense was really good, and maybe what held us back the most, you just point to really that one trip. We're undefeated. We go to Tuscaloosa, and their defensive line won that game. Alabama's defensive line, Kenny Smith, from Meridian, was on that defensive line for Alabama, and they won the physical battle. It kept us from being able to exercise our run game, and it put the game on the shoulders of our pass game when we'd get backed up in third down situations and we just couldn't get it done. So we didn't lack much. To answer your question, in 99, we didn't lack much. We just lacked a running game in one ball game that, had we won in Tuscaloosa, we'd have been 9-0, and we'd have been sitting in Atlanta for the second straight year.
Well, another this is the last question that we're going to talk about when it comes to the 98-99 season. This one game in particular that just really stuck out to me and made me a really, really big fan of yours when I was in high school, man. That Auburn game.
Yeah.
Please take me from the beginning to the end of that game, because I was a teenager watching that on Jefferson Pilot Sports. For you people out there, young people that don't remember that, it was that was it every Saturday morning. If Mississippi State wasn't on, it was going to be an Auburn or Alabama game.
Yeah.
And because me, I'm going to tell you as a fan before you answer that question. As a fan, when I seen Auburn go up 16-3, I was like, okay, I believe karma might been in got us, but I was like, see, just something about that game that just really just didn't sit right with me. It was like, you know what, we may not be out of this game, because I remember the Kentucky game. And I just remember how, that team persevered through that.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And I knew during that season, during that stretch, that was the game before the Kentucky game. And I was like, okay. And they gave Mississippi State, gave you guys that nickname, to never say die dog.
Yeah.
So take me from the beginning of that game, from 16-3 to the end.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's the one game that is the high point, for my career, for me personally. But, and I made some throws, but some other guys made some better plays in the game as the reason that it happened. But all that to say, Wayne started the game. I figured I was going to play, and I'd played a lot. We pretty much both played in most of those games that year. And we kind of got in a routine where, he would start, I'd play some. It was working for our team. But that particular day, I thought I was going to handle all the punting duties also, because the week before, Jeff Walker, our punter, had gotten a little banged up. Something was going on with him. He was an all-conference punter. So I was really excited going into this Auburn game that I was going to do all the punting too. And we go out for pregame warm-ups, and Jeff came out and he was like miraculously healed up and he could punt. So like I was disappointed, man. Like I wanted Jeff to be healthy, but I wanted to punt that particular day. And so I was kind of a little disappointed. It's funny how things will turn around on you. But Wayne, he got hurt. We weren't moving the ball very well. We were out of sync. We kept getting ourselves in against the chains, and we'd have these long third down situations. Auburn would lay their ears back and come get us. And they had a couple of plays on offense that were big explosive plays that put them on the scoreboard. So the pressure was on us in that second quarter. And right before halftime, Wayne injured that finger on his throwing hand. He tore a tendon in the back of his hand. He couldn't control, I think it was the ring finger, and it kept him from being able to grip the football at all. So they came to me at halftime. They said, hey, the rest of the game is going to be yours. I think I actually went in for him just before halftime, but then at halftime is when they came. They said, hey, he can't go. The rest of the game is going to be yours. So we continued with the same game plan in the third quarter, which was we run the ball on first down. You know, we run the ball on second down. We're trying to control the clock and keep their offense off the field, let our defense win the game for us, but we just couldn't, you know, that particular day run the ball against them. So we're down 16-0 with about 4.5 minutes left in the game or whatever. I take that back. We were 16-0 in the third quarter. We ran a trick play, which was a throwback across the field, a little rollout and throw back that we did complete it, and it got us in field goal range, and that's where the field goal came from, 16-3. We're down 16-3 with basically 2.5 to 3 minutes left, maybe just under 3 minutes. And like happened so many times that year, we flipped the switch on the game plan and went to the 2-minute offense, the shotgun, 4 wides. We're going to call it quickly on the field, a hurry up offense. And when we did that year, including in this game, things just worked. And it worked for me. Heck, I mean, it's why I got recruited as a college player to begin with, was getting in the shotgun, throwing the ball. It's just what I was comfortable doing. And so we finally had a chance to do that some. And yeah, we're 2.5 minutes left. We got into 4 wides, hurry up, and things just started working. I'm reading them. They had a big enough lead that Auburn got a little soft. They started playing not to lose as opposed to trying to play to win. We completed 7 in a row, right on down the field, bang, bang, bang. I always took the approach as a quarterback that in 2-minute offense, I don't need big plays. I just need completions. I just need a caught ball and get you out of bounds. And I need you to catch it and get across the stick. And I need you to catch it and get out of bounds. We'll take 5, 8, and 10-yard chunks. And if we do that, I'll hurry us up and get us down there. I don't have to have a 25-yard play. And that's the approach we took. We'd go 5 yards here, 7 yards here, 10 yards here. And then finally on that 7th one, we roll out, and I hit C.J. Sermons in the back of the end zone, and he made a great catch. And that in my entire career, that's probably the throw that I'm the most proud of because just before I get to the sideline, you have this thought process, and I knew there's a defender between me and him. And I knew I've got to put it up so he can out-jump it. And I put it up right where I wanted to, and he out-jumped him for the football. That put us at 16-10. And then, of course, Auburn got the ball back around a little over a minute. Our defense goes out, stops them. They couldn't move it, so they were so backed up. They chose to take a safety, run it out of the back of the end zone, give us 2 points, make it 16-12 so that they wouldn't have to punt out of their end zone. Does that make sense? Get it blocked. So then they come out and do the safety kick, boomed it to the other end of the field, and Pig Prather catches it like a kickoff and just hit the gas and returned it past midfield. And when he returned that kick, it made it 16-12. He returns that kick past midfield. We're about to call the play, and I knew, and the rest of us knew. And I think they knew I knew. We're fixing to score. I can feel it. It ain't about is it going to happen. It's just a matter of who's going to score. We're about to score. And then they call the play. And the first play, when we go back out with, whatever it was, under a minute, was a fake Hail Mary. We called it fake Hail Mary. So ball's near midfield. We put 4 receivers to the left, we're going to make it like we're running them all to the end zone. But the outside one was our true freshman then, Terrell Grindle. He was going to stop at 20 and come across the field. And we hoped they forget about him. And they did. And so I hit him. He catches it, runs it all the way down to the 10-yard line, out of bounds. And on the third down play is the one we scored where Matt Butler made the most unbelievable contested catch, one of the most unbelievable contested catches I've ever seen.
I thought it was a pick. I honestly thought that was an interception.
I did too.
Man.
I mean, from my vantage point, I thought it was a pick too. And it should have been.
It was a pick, and he snatched it out of his arm.
He took it away from him. I think you're exactly right. And they kind of sandwiched that football. And it was one of those plays on that touchdown play against Auburn where, like, here's what Tom Brady would have done. Tom Brady would have stayed. He would have hit his plant foot. He'd have stepped up right into the protection. He'd have thrown it on time, and it would have hit Matt at the goal line before the DB even got there. Okay, here's what Matt did. I take the snap. Because I had been running around, I started drifting, thinking, oh, I'm going to run out of here, right? So I started drifting to my right, losing ground. I drifted right into my protection, which it was perfect protection. The tackle was doing his job, but I drifted into him. Instead of stepping up into the pocket, I drift over, which made me throw off my back foot kind of over somebody's shoulder, which took velocity off the ball and brought him right over into the safety and made him have to catch it while he hit the guy. So it was a pretty unbelievable moment. And you know what? You said it. Coming back and winning that game for that 99 team, it stamped us as individuals. We knew, okay, we can win every game on our schedule, and we got a little something special going on. And it was a chemistry moment. Yeah, and it propelled us the next week against Kentucky. It sure did.
So we want to move past your Bulldog career, life after Mississippi State. Now, talk about your professional football experience, and then we're going to get into your radio career.
Yeah, I didn't really have much of one. I graduated in May of 2000, and but right before graduation, I actually went ahead and left. I got on a plane and went to Hamburg, Germany. There was a team over there. Our offensive line coach at State was a guy named Jerry Freeman who had a friend coaching in Germany, and that's how that connection happened. It was not NFL Europe. It was the GFL, the German Football League. And, played there in Hamburg there for that 1 year. And it was not a bad job at all. You know, you're playing ball. Hamburg had a nice arena. We played in a big 50,000-seat soccer arena. We had, good attendance in Hamburg. But it was different. It was not SEC-level football, and it was away from home. There is no bass fishing in Hamburg, Germany. There is no, I couldn't find the food that I liked in Germany. I was eating weird stuff all the time, It was a different way of life over there. Yeah, I'm not huge on bratwurst and stuff that, you can't pronounce it, much less spell it. I want chicken, right? Eggs and bacon, so I was constantly going to the store and just cooking for myself. And I lived in an apartment the team gave me that was on the 6th floor. It was a nice apartment, the 6th floor of this building, but no elevator. Okay, so every time you get home or leave, you're up and down 6 flights of stairs.
I would not live in that building.
Yeah, but it was fun. It was a fun experience, and came back home. And after coming back home, I interviewed for a job at WTVA television in Tupelo. Right after I interviewed with them, I felt like I was going to get hired. I got a phone call from the team in Munich, Germany, to come back and play, and I told them no. I told them I wanted to stay here and just start going to work. And, and so I got in television, and then my hair fell out, and that led me to radio.
So you didn't have a face for radio, but a hair for radio.
Oh, I got all of it for radio. I promise you, man. Yeah, that TV stuff. So, I was not made for TV.
A question I had, and I've told people over the years, is watching your ability, not just of course as an announcer, being able to be the play-by-play guy and all that, but just watching your ability to analyze film. I was like, man, I'm surprised any Mississippi State coach hasn't approached you about being a quarterback coach. I know it's other things that go into that, but I always kind of wondered that because I felt like you would be great for our quarterbacks. I always feel like our quarterbacks, that's one of the areas sometimes they kind of lack, was that ability to really that football IQ part of the game.
Yeah.
Up until later years with Mullen. But yes.
To be the head coach at one point. I think you did, didn't you?
Do what now?
Didn't you bring that up, Jeremiah, about him being
No, I think I mentioned about him being like a quarterback coach or something like that. I was kind of wondering about that. So were you ever approached by anyone to be a quarterback coach, maybe at the college level or maybe take any type of high school job?
Yes, I had a couple of opportunities. I spent a couple of years, I was working at Northeast Community College, Northeast up there in Boonville. And while I was there, they invited me out. I worked with the quarterbacks a little bit. I actually helped them during the game some. I sit up in the booth, wear a headset, watch them and kind of watch and observations, pass it down the sideline. I never caught the coaching bug though. And that's what it takes, Jeremiah. This is what I know. And I appreciate you saying that. It's kind words, but this is what I know. From an X's and O's standpoint, what people need to realize when they watch my film studies and watch my breakdowns, the stuff that I'm showing and talking about is very basic.
Right.
For people in the game that are learning it, like quarterbacks and the coaches have forgotten more X's and O's than I know, many of them. So the X's and O's part of it, I get it and I understand the basics, and I'm able to, because I'm a communicator, I can communicate that and show that to you and to others and fans, and they can get an idea of what these quarterbacks are trying to process. But it is so deep what they are doing on every play and what these coaches are dealing with from an X's and O's standpoint. Yeah. The thing that I would have, and I know this, I've said this before, it sounds like a very, I don't know, what's the word, maybe overconfident statement. If I wanted to be a coach, if it was strictly for me of, I want to make $1 million coaching, I could do it. I could have done that. I could do it. I could drop what I'm doing and go do it right now. But I don't want to, because in college, in college, you have to recruit, and I wouldn't be able to do that. I also wouldn't be able to put up with being away from my family. I'm a family guy. I want to be at home with my wife and daughter. And people that don't, I don't blame them, but people like me, you don't blame me. That's my life. That's what I want. So I wouldn't be able to do that. I wouldn't be able to do the high school thing because, frankly, I don't want to move around. I I grew up moving around. I want to stay put. I don't want to move. So those are some reasons I didn't do it. I would be able to have an advantage as a quarterback coach because of the mentality part of it, the mental coaching, the approach, the how to get a guy ready to have his heartbeat at the right level before a ball game. I would have an advantage in those things, but I never got into it for some of those other reasons.
Now, I will say this weird. You was kind of talking about the things that you kind of explained. I kind of didn't even really think about it. I mean, I like to watch the game. I feel like I have a decent level of understanding, but it's some stuff you don't even get until – I can still remember, I think, our first game of the year. I went to a watch party, and I want to say Guidry didn't catch the ball. And everybody was like, man, how did he, not get that ball or something like that? And the guy that played college football, first thing he said as soon as he saw the play was like, he lost it in the sun. That's the first thing he said, and then we ended up finding out that's exactly what happened. So it's little things like that you don't even see. And there's another friend of mine, he played at Mississippi State, Reggie Harris. We talk about stuff, and he'll see stuff that I just don't catch. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
The basic level of it. But
coaches are amazing. Look, and if you could go and stand next to some of these coaches, let's say during a practice when they're doing 11-on-11 scrimmaging, so you got 22 guys on the field running full speed, hitting each other, and they'll run one play, and those coaches will be able to tell you what everybody did. It's uncanny. Like, you watch it, and all you see is dust flying up in the air, and that coach will start hollering and screaming at the right guard, saying, man, come on, you stepped with your left foot right here. I told you step forward with your right and then push, and I'm like, how'd you see that? Those coaches they're on a different level.
All right, so now we finally got to the part that I am very passionate about. So I've been wanting to ask you, they were talking about your radio career. How did the whole head-to-head radio thing happen? Because I remember back when I was a young teacher, back in, had to be 2011, 2012, I was at Lanier High School, and when I was on my commute home, I would always hear Head to Head Radio, and I think that was the one that started off about first of all, you don't smoke peyote, and then there was also the quote from Remember the Titans. Like that's how I always knew it was coming on. So how did that come about?
Well, you know, that was one of those things where I was doing my own show in the mornings up here in North Mississippi. Actually, I had a couple of affiliates in different parts of the state too. Richard Cross was doing a show in the afternoons in Oxford. I had a sponsor relationship with C Spire. At the time, they were Cellular South, you know, was the name of their company. And I had a sponsor relationship with them. And I also knew the folks at Cellular South and had a relationship because they did some high school football stuff on television, and they hired me, you know, to do their games and all that kind of stuff, broadcast them on TV. Richard was doing his own show, and he went to them saying, "Hey, I want you to sponsor my show." And the CEO of that company, he's from Mississippi, his name's Hugh Mina. He told Richard, he said, "Hey, I appreciate your proposal. I got something else I want to talk to you about. It's an idea I have." And so he asked Richard, he said, "Hey, do you know Matt?" And he's like, "Well, not really." And this guy who was the CEO of that company said, "I have an idea, and I think Mississippi needs a radio show that is, you know, combined State and Ole Miss. And, you know, y'all would be perfect for this. And we'd be happy to support it if y'all could put it together, if you think it would work." And so they came to me and said, "Here's the idea." And at the time I had a good job. I had two jobs. I was doing sports development for the city of Tupelo, which was going out and recruiting like youth baseball, youth softball, soccer events to come into town so that they'd come here and spend their money. And I was getting up every day at 4 o'clock and doing a radio show from 6 to 8. So I'd do radio from 6 to 8 and then go to work. And I was making good money. I was newly married. We were trying to have a baby. And so the money that was coming in I knew was going to be important to us, and it would be a risk to do without it. And so I basically told them, okay, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to be a part of this. This is the way we need to do it. And this is what it's going to take to do it right financially. And they were like, "Sure, that'll work. We'll do it." And so it really was the CEO of C Spire, Hugh Mina, it was his idea to get us together. And once we started having meetings, we came up with the name of the show. I don't really know who gets credit, but I just usually sat in the meetings and listened. Somebody came up with that idea. And then we put it together. We both quit what we were doing and went to work full time on lining up enough radio affiliates to launch the show. And we got it launched in the July of 2011 is when we launched it. About 2 weeks after we started the show, my daughter was born. And then we did that show for 7 years, 2 years on our own. And then after 2 years, the TeleSouth company came and got us. They wanted us on their network. They came and got us, and we did the show on their network for 5 years before I left in July of 2018. So that's sort of the oral history of that whole deal.
Okay, so is it safe to say, because when you left the show, it was kind of like, oh, so is it kind of like that you left so that you kind of started making some moves on your own, or how did that go down?
Yeah. I want to give you the respect of giving you an honest answer. So I'll do it diplomatically. One is after 7 years is a long time in radio. It really is. 7 years is a long time in media. A lot of great TV shows last barely 6-7 years, stuff like that. So media, 7 years, a long time in media. And we did it for 7 years, but it was going well. But I had become a little unhappy with different things in the last couple of years run, of that show. I didn't have any issues. Richard and I had a great working relationship, didn't have any issues with him, anything like that, but just started feeling uneasy during the last couple of years of it, like this is coming to an end. I knew it. I could see it coming. Like this ain't going to keep on keeping on the way it is. And so what's going to happen next? And so for the last couple of years that we were on that show, literally the last maybe 2 years, in the background, what I was doing was thinking and praying about what's next. What is next? What are we going to do? What's next? And there were some opportunities out there for me, and I had some people encouraging me to maybe do my own thing. But I kept putting it off and putting it off. And then finally there came a day where it just became obvious, okay, it's time for me to go. So walking away from it was tough, walked away from it. But you touched on it. Yes, a big motivation in doing it was a video production business that I currently, am running and involved in, that I had kind of started on the side back then. And I knew it had a chance to grow if I had time to put into it. And so that's a big reason, is I didn't want to do just a radio show anymore. I was really not satisfied with just getting on the air and talking for 2 or 3 hours and calling it a job. And I really wanted to do more. And so I went out and started my own company and picked up, some steady work doing video production projects. And I'm still doing radio. So it kind of has all worked out.
Okay. When I asked that question, I wanted to be really diplomatic, because I don't know what your relationship with Richard Cross is right now, but the work that you do right now is excellent.
Thank you.
I like the breakdowns. I subscribe. I share the stuff inside of the group and everything like that. But when I was watching Head to Head, when I was listening to Head to Head radio, let me just say that it's kind of like a Shawn Michaels, Marty Jannetty type of deal. Beyonce, Destiny's Child. Like, now you're on your own, and you know what I'm
Basically,
saying?
Arthur, what you're saying, he was too big for that. He was bigger than the room.
Oh, you see what happened between Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. Shawn Michaels became the showstopper, the Heartbreak Kid.
Is that right?
I'm a wrestling guy, so
Yeah, like, no shade to Richard Cross or whatever, but like when I was listening to the show, sometimes I'd be like, but like I say, the stuff you do now is excellent, just top-notch stuff,
So piggybacking off of that, and I guess speaking to the show, I want to say I wasn't living in Mississippi, so I guess I didn't listen to the show as much. Of course, I'm familiar with it, but how tough it is? And you say you stuck on a couple. It wasn't like you say you had problems for a couple months, a couple years. Yeah. How hard is this to, I guess, knowing that you had those issues, but obviously it's a show that seemingly was very important to a lot of people, especially in the state of Mississippi. How hard it is to, I guess, and were you kind of sticking around knowing that the show was important to a lot of people?
Yes, there was definitely an element of that. But honestly, like primarily, it was important to our family, raising a child and, trying to work towards a situation where my wife maybe didn't have to work as much, and trying to work. So, the steady paycheck and the money, the show was very successful, tremendous support from sponsors and everything. So, that was a big reason. Yes, it was important to us. It was important to people. It was popular. And just wanting to finish everything. And that was a big thing for me, is like to walk away. Somebody's going to say you quit. Okay. If you walk away. And so I went for 2 years not quitting. That's basically it. There were times when I was really tempted to say I'm out, but I went for 2 years without quitting. And then finally there was a day when it was really clear to me, like I had total peace in my heart that God had put his foot in my back and went boom and shoved me right out the door. And I had total peace that that's what had finally happened. And that decision has been justified by the success that we've had since then, if that makes any sense. But it is not easy to walk away from something that is successful. I'll say that.
So I guess the question, I of course, being on this side of things, not being a player anymore, at times you may have to be critical, especially having a radio show. I mean, things are going to come up. Yeah. So I want to say, how do you straddle the fence? Or how do you be critical without, I don't know what the exact word would be. I mean, of course, you have like the Skip Baylesses of the world with the First Takes and the Undisputeds now. How do you be critical without offending maybe someone? Because obviously Mississippi State sports has been very good to you. But how do you be critical without possibly offending someone in that department? Obviously, you're an announcer too.
Sure. Yeah. It is different. It's two different roles. Like if I'm in the booth on the headset calling the game for the school during the game, that's a different capacity. I'm going to be less critical in that role. And it is different than when I get on the radio on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday and we're doing the talk show. So those two things are different. I may be more critical there. This is the way I approach it. And I haven't always stayed true to this. I've veered off at times, and a lot of times that'll has gotten me in hot water when I've veered, but I try not to veer off from this. And that is, it's okay to be critical of a play. It's okay to be critical of a decision.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to be critical of something that happened or didn't happen. But in most cases, for me, it's not okay to be critical of the person.
Okay.
It's not okay to be critical of the individual. It's okay for me to say, Stephen Guidry should have caught the ball. It's never okay for me to say, Stephen Guidry can't catch. You see the difference?
Mm-hmm.
And I always want to look at that through the eyes of the player also, to never let go of that. I don't want to be Skip Bayless. I don't want to be a guy who didn't play, but I can get 1 million people to know who I am if I can say something inflammatory enough. Okay. He's looking to accumulate. He's looking for quantity. I'm looking to influence. Okay. I'd rather influence positively 10 people than to accumulate 10 million zombies. Okay. So that's the way I'm looking at this. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of being critical, if the play it needs to be criticized, if the decision needs to be criticized, I can say it, but I'm never going to criticize the individual. And that's kind of the way I approach it.
So how hard was it? I know we've talked to a lot of former players, and a lot of my friends are former players. And obviously when we're going through the Moorhead drama, a lot of them were highly critical. Mm-hmm. I know we even had Ed on, and he said he don't even criticize people. When we brought up Moorhead, he was like, oh yeah, that's one person I would speak on. So how hard was it in that everything about the Moorhead thing and this past season, then all the drama of how they fired him? How hard was it to not harshly criticize in a situation like that, when obviously a lot of former Mississippi State players were very vocal, not in support of him?
Right.
Plus the Fitzgerald debacle.
Right. Well, and y'all look, the Eris Williams debacle.
Yeah.
I
wasn't even touching on that, but
well, the fact is they wasted the final year of his career, and it's not a personal thing. I don't have a personal relationship with Eris. We all followed his career. We saw it. Well, that's a young man who had his senior year was wasted because of those decisions, and Eris was a good football player. So there were poor decisions made all along the way. The number one poor decision or decisions were the ones that were made about their strength and conditioning program. That was a total reversal of all the things they had built in that Mullen era. They almost tore all the strength and conditioning part of it down over the last 2 years. And now you got a staff and people in there that know they got to get it back to the way it was.
Right.
So that was bad decisions. It was a poor decision to think that they're going to come in year one and quote unquote change the culture. What culture you want to change? They had a winning culture, a tough physical culture. And I tell you another early sign that started to rub me the wrong way too was the trying to lower expectations. Like, Joe would be in a press conference every now and then. He might say things like, this is a place that they haven't won a conference championship here since 1948. Or, in private conversations behind the scenes, it's not like we're coaching the 1985 Bears here. Stuff, things like that. Well, Yeah. Okay. On the surface, those things are
Those are
true.
the things you get into the inside of things we don't even know a lot about. Okay.
What we're saying here is, well, what I saw was this thing of, hey, give us a little time, or it's going to take us a while to build what we want. When the rest of us are looking at it going, hey, I may get hit by a bus next year. To heck with time. You got Jeffrey Simmons and Montez Sweat and Jonathan Abram now, you know.
Errol Thompson, Willie Gay.
Yeah.
Came in saying, get your championship ring fingers ready. You know, I mean, what kind of championship was we going to be doing? Intramural?
Right.
Exactly.
It wasn't the right fit. And here's the thing about it. You know, on a personal level, Joe is a great guy. He is a tremendous individual. But the thing about it is, I worried even at the beginning. I started thinking, let's name the truly nice guys who have been winning SEC head coaches.
Nobody.
Zero.
None. And I started wondering, is that going to work? The thing about Dan Mullen was a jerk, man.
Man, yeah, I've heard.
I told y'all that. I know
it.
I can specifically remember. I think I went to an FCA thing before I moved to Houston, and I remember riding back, and I was talking to one of the guys on the team, and I was like, "Hey, you know, you see Mullen on the sideline, he's cussing up a storm or just going off, especially early in this time in Mississippi State." And I asked one of the guys, "Yo, man, is Mullen a lot more mellow, behind the scenes?" Because you always hear, "Oh, he's not really like that." He was like, "No, that's literally all he said."
You like that? Look, I think one way I worded it was, if you're waiting to have a warm, fuzzy moment with Dan Mullen, you just keep waiting. It ain't happening ever, because that's not what he's about. He's like this right here. He's got blinders on. And if you're in his path, if you can help him win a football game, okay, that's good. But if you can't help him win a football game, you might as well be invisible or get out of his way. And here's the deal about it. If you're paying a coach, $4 or $5 million a year to coach your football team, what do you want from him? Most of the guys who win at this highest level, they have a personality that they are not concerned with what other people think about them.
Mm.
It is strictly about driving that team to win, and that's kind of their personality. And see, Joe's the opposite. That's why I think Joe is going to work great at Oregon. He's going to coach the offensive side of the ball. He's going to have Oregon athletes. Mm-hmm. He can be a friend of those guys and kind of get them coached on that side of the ball without having to worry about all the other stuff. And he'll do well out there.
I always thought I liken it. I'm a teacher, and he's kind of like the teacher who all the kids love, but they run over him. But
yeah.
I mean, it happens. I'm telling you, it's plenty of teachers that care about kids love them, but go past the classroom, it's like World War III in there. So, so how is it having, I guess, transitioning from Moorhead, and obviously it was a lot of behind the things you saw, obviously, as someone's on this side and a former player. But to a guy like Leach, what I get the vibe with Leach, I kind of like it. I know some people say he's one of the greatest coaches. I don't necessarily subscribe to all of that, but he's obviously got it proven. How's it having a coach that go from a coach who we've gone from probably really 3 unproven coaches, our last 3 hires, to hiring a guy that we know at least for one can coach the offense side of football. We know that. Mm-hmm. And we know as a proven head coach that he's won before. How important it is to have a coach like that, because obviously that's a different level of credibility with the players.
Absolutely. They are going to have some fun now, especially on the offensive side of the ball. But they're going to have some fun. So here's what you have. You go from, as a team, you like your head coach. You personally, you like him, but you're not sure you'd go run through a wall for him, mm-hmm. right? You go to a guy in Leach who at practice and on game days and in team stuff, you're not going to like him very much. Mm-hmm. Nobody is. His assistant coaches aren't going to like him very much. You talk to guys who played for him and they'll tell you, yeah, I mean, he's laid back. And as a person, he's laid back and he's different. But, buddy, when that first whistle blows at practice, that guy is locked in. He is not putting up with anything. He's old school when they start practice. That's what the former players say. So you go from one to the other. So it's a change in that regard, the way they are looking at this head coach. And as you said, every player on the team knows this guy's twice been the national coach of the year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this guy's I can count on two hands the number of quarterbacks he's put in the NFL over the last 15, 20 years. I can count on two hands the number of receivers he's put in the NFL. So that's different. The other thing that is different is this, and y'all remember I told you, the offensive players are going from playing on Saturdays the last 2 years while confused, okay, about lining up, what's the play. They're getting certain things down pat, but once we snap the ball, I'm reading this, I'm reading that, I got a million things. They were in a state of confusion. Watch the pass game. You could tell they were confused a lot of the time. They're going from playing in a state of confusion to there is going to be no confusion in the Mike Leach offense. That is not an issue the way they coach this thing. So, great quote from Darryl Royal, way back when he was the Mississippi State coach was,
how they messed it up.
He said, it's impossible to be aggressive and confused. Right? So think about that.
You gotta be able to go.
You're right.
Okay.
If I'm going to be totally as aggressive as I can be, I need to have no doubt about what step I'm going to make when you blow the whistle or snap the ball and who I'm hitting or where I'm running or what I'm doing. If I'm not confused at all, I can be ultimately aggressive. And so that's why that offense, part of the reason that offense has been so successful. So you're going to have guys like Kylan Hill and, you know, and receivers and pass catchers and everybody who've been playing confused the last 2 years. So now there's going to be no confusion. They're going to free up. They're going to play full speed. Mm-hmm. They're going to look and be better than they have looked and been. And that's why I'm not worried about the pass catcher group. I think they're better than people realize. I think they've been playing confused. I think they're not going to be confused anymore.
I love Javonte Payton. I think he's going to be special in his offense myself. I really do.
I'm gonna try to, you know what I'm saying, cut it down. We're gonna wrap it up at this point in time. We're really 2-part questions. I got one question is what do you think about with this upcoming season, everything's going on, how do you think the Bulldogs will fare this season? And I'm gonna step back into the Jordan Moorhead era just to shade with a question like what do you think how do you think he handled the whole quarterback situation with the Nick Fitzgerald, Keaton Thompson situation?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll work backwards on that. The Nick and Keaton thing. I think that it was a situation that was tough on everybody. Not just Keaton Thompson, but also Nick. I think it was tough on him just because they didn't know what they were doing. I mean, you could go back and watch them try to throw the ball in that 2018 season at times. There were way too many times that nobody had a clue what they were doing. So it was tough on everybody. But you go this last year and, you know, you bring in Tommy Stevens. And Tommy, he obviously is a great athlete when healthy, but had not played. And I think that this is just my observation on the outside looking in. I think that Keaton probably felt like he just didn't quite get a fair shot at a lot of stuff there. And any player, that's all you want, is I can take it if the guy beats me out. I can take it. Really, I can live with that. You know, if he's better, I see it every day in practice. I'm watching it on film. I can see he's better, whatever. I want to play, but if he beats me, he beats me. But to have the decision made or feel like you don't get a fair shot, that's a tough deal. And right, wrong, or indifferent, I do think that was part of that scenario, is he felt like maybe he just didn't quite get a real opportunity at it. You know, you're bringing in your guy and he's got 1 year. It's a pretty obvious thing right there. I admired very much, and I've communicated a little bit with Keaton. I admired very much the way he handled it. Never once openly did he pout or whine about anything. He said all the right things. He went to practice. He worked, and he's going to have himself a pretty good opportunity on a pretty good football team at Virginia. I'll tell you that much. And I'm pulling for him. I think that's what it was. My take on it is because of the transfer situation, and Tommy did have a ton of potential. But Tommy's lack of experience is what really showed its head once he got on the field some. These SEC defenses started eating him up, and when they did, he held onto the ball and just kind of got locked up. And you can't do that. And so anyway, that's kind of my take on that. This team this year for Mississippi State, until I see them practice and see otherwise, and we didn't get to watch them in the spring. So right now, what I kind of think about them is that they may have trouble stopping people simply because of, little attrition on the defensive side of the ball and youth in the secondary. I'd love to be wrong about that. Some guys grow up and be better, and then, the new scheme really work. But I look at personnel on the defensive side of the ball. I think at times they may be thin. They've missed out on an entire, off season of strength and conditioning, which a lot of time leads to injuries. So you get into your depth. So I think they'll have a hard time stopping people on defense. But they're going to score points in abundance on everybody they play on offense. And, Costello is a legit NFL prospect right now, like this minute before he ever takes another snap. The pass catcher group at State is a lot better than people realize. When you go out there and just stand and talk to Osiris Mitchell and Malik Heath and Peyton and this 6'5" kid from Alabama who's transferring in there. Just go talk to him. It's like looking at a basketball team, okay? And then you see what's there in the slot. And then you got Kylan in the backfield. That offensive line is better than people realize. There's some guys on that offensive line this year who go and play NFL football, and they're a little underrated too. I think they are privately, if they can get practice going, I think they are privately, secretly pretty excited about their offensive personnel.
Well, with that being said, I sure like, I know me and the rest of the guys really sure like to thank you for coming on and giving us this opportunity to interview. It's been a really long time coming. Especially me for myself, being a fan of yours. Like I said, I became a bigger fan after that Auburn game. And with that being said, especially you going into the avenues that you're going into now, being a radio host, basically nationally syndicated, because you're more, I don't look at you as a regional radio host. I look at you as someone national. And that's something that we're aspiring to do, building off, the momentum that we have with our podcast. I just, this has been a privilege and an honor to have you on tonight.
Hey, listen, y'all been too kind. I appreciate the kind words very much, very, very much. And I would encourage y'all, you have a great show, and I would encourage you to, stay at it, always finish, just keep going. And what's great about you guys is you are who you are. You're not like a lot of these, goobers on the radio who get on there and put on a show and use their radio voice and all that kind of stuff.
Brandon Walker.
Bo Bounds.
Right. You kind of are who you're real, and that's always going to last versus other things. So y'all are doing a great job as well. I just appreciate it. Appreciate the invitation. I'm honored.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Y'all just let me know. I'll be ready to go.
All right,
Another thing, before Arthur gets before you say that, please share this episode when he gets done, when he puts this out here.
Absolutely.
Because that'll be, oh my goodness, please tweet it, share it, whatever, however you can get it out there.
Absolutely. Will do. Absolutely. No problem.
All right, so let me go ahead and get the guys' thoughts really, really quickly, because we've been on air for almost 2 hours and anybody got time for that. So Jeremiah, very quickly.
Oh man, just thank you, Matt or Mr. Wyatt, for being on. Like I said, we followed your career the last couple of years. And thank you just for coming on and being honest and kind of giving us just a lot of behind the scenes of your playing career. And then, just toward the end, you kind of were fairly honest from an announcer standpoint about the Joe Moorhead era without telling us too much. I appreciate you being honest about that, because a lot of times people don't do that. So thanks for coming on and being honest about, those situations, because that's what our listeners want to hear.
All right, my new close personal friend, Derek Thomas, what's up?
Man, I just want to thank you, Matt, for coming on, man. It's good to talk football with you, and can't wait to talk football with you once we start playing football on the mic.
Amen. I totally agree. I cannot wait.
All right, Ricardo Suggs, what you got for us?
I don't really have too much, man. Just like I said early on, just glad to have him on. I'm glad he hit me back up and responded to my message. That's pretty much it. I'm just over here elated, man.
All right.
Let me just say real quick, every time Ricardo talks, Will Smith's picture pops up on my computer screen. And now every time I see Will Smith, I'm going to hear Ricardo's voice in my head. I just want y'all to know.
Entanglement.
Entanglements, no.
All right. So normally this is the part where I say praise the Lord and go Dogs, but since Coach Schaefer wants nothing to do with Mississippi State University no more, I have to say K-bye. But one thing that I want to leave off with that I learned from head-to-head radio is that you do not smoke Coyote. K-bye.